In this video, I'll introduce VMware's NSX product. Now, we could spend a whole week just learning about NSX. As a matter of fact, I regularly teach classes that take a whole week just learning about NSX. But what I want to focus on in this particular video is what you need to know for the VMware Certified Associate exam. And we really don't need to know a whole lot about NSX for that exam, but we do need to know essentially what it's used for, right? So with a traditional physical network, we have some challenges that NSX can help us overcome. And some of those challenges include, how long does it take to get a new physical switch deployed, or a new VLAN, or a new subnet? And what if we could abstract virtual networking from the physical hardware, right? What if we needed a new layer 2 segment? We could just roll it out right in the virtual network without having to make any changes on the physical network. Right? That's the goal of NSX, is to basically allow us to make network changes, and the physical network gear becomes simple transport capacity. We can make whatever changes we want on the virtual side, on the NSX side. So NSX is actual network virtualization, right? It's not a virtual network. It's taking those network components that have traditionally been physical components like routers and firewalls and providing virtual equivalents to those systems so that we can control everything with software. And it doesn't really matter what kind of physical hardware we're using, right? Just like we do with our virtual machines. Think about virtual machines. Right? Does it really matter if your VM is running on an HP host or a Dell host or an IBM host or whatever? The physical gear is essentially just compute horsepower, right? It's processors, it's memory, and that's it. That's where we're trying to get with networking. That's the goal of NSX, is to get to a similar place with networking where we don't really care what the underlying physical network is made up of. We can make all of our changes, customize everything, set everything up that requires intelligence in software. Right. So that's the goal of NSX, is to allow us to do things like create logical switches, create logical routers, right? Move that layer 3 routing functionality into a virtual device. Move firewalling into the virtual space as well. And give us this firewall called a distributed firewall that we can apply at an individual virtual machine level. You may have heard of a term called micro-segmentation. That's what we try to do with NSX. Right? So the NSX comes with a distributed firewall that allows us to configure firewall rules that can be applied at an individual virtual machine level. So it has some huge advancements from a security perspective. There's also all of these edge services like load balancing and VPNs and layer 2 bridges and all sorts of other options that we can provide with edge services of NSX. And it has very tight integration with third-party vendors as well for things like deep packet inspection and intrusion prevention systems and things like that. And so here's kind of a quick look at the NSX overall functionality. Right. So we have all of these network services that have been traditionally provided by physical hardware, like switches. Right, here's a logical switch, an NSX logical switch. Here's another logical switch. So we can easily spin up and roll out logical switches with layer 2 segments that exist only within NSX. Right? And that's one of the biggest differences that NSX gives us. So you may be thinking right now, well, we've already got, traditional virtual switches. We've got distributed switches. We've got standard switches. Why do I care about a new type of virtual switch called a logical switch? Well, just think about it this way. Right? If I decide to create a new distributed switch or a new standard virtual switch, I have to create all of the matching VLANs in my physical hardware. Right? I have to set up my router to route those VLANs. If I create a new logical switch, everything is contained within my virtualized network, and I do not need to make any changes to the physical hardware. I don't even use VLANs on those logical switches. So that's what I'm talking about when I say, decoupling the network from the physical hardware. It allows you to make whatever changes you want in the NSX environment without having any reliance on the reconfiguration of the physical network hardware. Right? And we can even put in routers, distributed logical routers, distributed firewalls. We can put in an edge firewall, load balancer, VPN solutions, and we can layer all of this on top of the existing physical network hardware that we already have. So NSX is going to be huge. It's already pretty huge. and as time goes on, it's only going to get bigger because it adds so much capabilities and functionalities to a virtualized environment so that you can just do all of the stuff in the network that you could not really even do a lot of it before. But also the decoupling of the network configuration from the physical network hardware is a huge selling point for